tell us a little bit about your affiliation with the college as well as your role in the sculpting program?
I've been teaching in the continuing ed program at St. John's College for about 17 years, and I teach figure sculpture in clay in the fall semester and stone carving in the spring semester. I'm going to show you how I work through the process of carving alabaster. I'm currently working on a series of female figures, and each one is individual to the specific stone that I start with, and they have organic elements as part of their figures when they're done. So I begin with a very rough stone, for example this one, which hasn't been cut at all, and then I start to define the figure. I always start with the figure. I can usually see it right away when I pick up the stone. So here you can see I've started carving this curved figure, the legs, the chest, the waist. The next step is further defining the figure, and then once the figure has been determined, I will carve the sides and the back into a wing-shaped pattern, or maybe a shell, or something watery like that. This piece is a little bit further along. The figure has been defined. It's lovely. Carved all the way around. And now what remains is further defining it and smoothing all of the facets, all the edges. And the final step is this one is complete. This is polished alabaster. So you can see here's the female form, and then you see the wing shapes as I turn it. The series is called Naiads, which is goddesses from Greek myths, all water related. So that really fits my watery forms. And she is Naiad number 19. And I like to get at least part of each piece to be a little bit translucent. One of the beautiful things about alabaster that's specific to that stone is it has a translucency when it's carved thin enough. These will all be similar, and the way that you can tell the color when you're carving is to get them wet. This shows you approximately what that color will be when it's polished. There's quite a variety within the pink, warm tones of the stone. Each stone really is very individual. Even if I take one block and split it into smaller pieces, each piece is going to take a different kind of marbling. So now let me demonstrate a little bit of the carving process. I've just barely started this figure. You can see it's going to be kind of curved here. So first I'll define the form of the figure with my chisels. I have different chisels for different uses. This is a half round chisel, so that is good for carving concave areas, like the side of the waist. This is the size of the wedge here determines how much stone is taken off. So this is a fairly thin wedge because I'm working on a small scale. If I was working on a larger scale, I might use a thicker wedge.
Such as?
This one is thicker,
right.
You can see, just slightly, but you can see that it is fatter right in here. And then the point chisel is great for the beginning defining the form. Takes a lot of material off very quickly. So here I want to thin this leg down. This is an old art form. These are the same chisels that Michelangelo used. Well, not the same ones, but the same style. So although we have power tools, the basic technology has remained the same all these years. I have about 12 to 14 students.
Very neat.
Approximately half of that would be St. John's students, and the other half would be community members. And it's really fun to mix the adults with the college students. And I usually have some people who have taken my class before, some experienced carvers or figure sculptors, as well as people who have never tried it before. It takes years to master this art form, so people are welcome to take the class as long as they like. I'm still learning new things about how to do it better, more efficiently, more interesting. Many times it'll be different from what I had in mind when I started. So, especially with this kind of art form, it's important to keep an open mind and work with the material. Sometimes you'll find a flaw in the stone, a vein, or maybe a hairline fracture. A bigger piece will break off than what I had planned. So, or it snaps in half. Sometimes I have to scrap it and really start over. That also happens. This is a sandbag, and one of the hardest things with a small piece like this is keeping it still while I'm carving it because of the force going into the stone. So sandbags help a lot. This wooden piece here is called a cradle, so you can drape it over the edge of your table and it keeps it from moving forward. I've been sculpting pretty much since college. So it's been many, many years. I've been doing the stone carving since I was about 25. I love the stone carving because you're really working with a natural material, and the beauty of the material has its own qualities that you can't find in clay or bronze or something like that. This is a smaller hammer. It's about 1.5 pounds, and this is a kilo. So once I've used the point chisel to make my shape, then I use the tooth chisel to define the planes. I think a background in anatomy is really important when you're working with the figure, and lots of practice in clay can't be replaced by anything else. The stone carving students, we use clay throughout the class. If you start a stone project, get stuck, then we make what you have in clay and then change that. When I'm teaching stone carving, I have each person picks out their own stone from a big pile in the middle of the floor, and then I encourage students to begin the carving process without a finished product in mind. It's really important just to learn how to use the chisels and see how each different chisel cuts in a different way, how the stone breaks, a big blow, a small blow. All these variations are important to learn before you have a detailed plan in mind. So this is called direct carving, when you let the stone actually determine the outcome of the piece. If you've taken my class once or more times before, then you can come in and say, I'd like to carve a bear, and we find a stone that's close to that idea. So these are abstract pieces, right, but they're based on figurative movements with hands.
Oh, cool.
And sometimes a student will come into my class and they say, I have to carve a fish. And they're a first-time student, and I'll give them my little lecture about picking a stone and trying to find what the stone has in it. But if you just have that fish in mind, sometimes you'll still end up with a version of it, but it'll be more of a free-flowing form than something very tight. I think that's probably the most difficult part about my stone carving class, is asking people to leave their ideas outside the classroom and have an open mind. But it's really such a critical part of the creative process. Each class session is 2 hours. We meet for 10 sessions, so it's a 20-hour semester total. And most people are able to finish something fairly, small and defined within that time period. Not everyone, right? Most. When I get this defined, then I'll come over here to my files, and still using my cradle and the setup, I will take different files to further define the figure. Now this is this is slower, but if you have nice sharp files, which I do, it's very efficient. Now, alabaster is a soft stone, one of the softer ones. Marble is much, much harder. You would need different kinds of files altogether for marble. These are steel, you would need carbide for that. In a way, the carving process is making smaller and smaller marks in the stone. Then these big ones, I would use, like, I want this to be a little curvier. I don't want to chisel here because it's pretty thin at the edge. So I go from the edge towards the thicker area. And I like to keep as close to the outside dimensions of the stone as possible, just to keep that natural form. You can see that curve taking shape. And really, if a piece is going to pop off, I want it to pop off sooner rather than later, so just let it go. Polishing is done with sandpaper. Finer, finer, finer sandpaper. And then the final step is a buffing wheel with a polishing compound to get the shine. Although you can get the shine just by going to finer and finer and finer sandpaper. You can go up to 3200 and skip the buffing wheel. So even when I'm in the sanding process, I'm still sculpting.
Absolutely.
I'm still shaping and defining the details. It's important to be mindful of each step of the process. And I think it started with legs. And then I thought, wait, there's no room for wings. So what am I going to do? And then I just sort of thought of the spiral. And I tried several different spiral patterns before I came up with this one.
Beautiful.
Thank you. This piece is a precursor to the Naiad series in that it's the Colorado pink alabaster, which you can see the beautiful tones in it. And I was working on it outside over the summer a couple years ago, and I was very carefully sanding in here to get this shape. And the sunlight came through a little corner, and I could see that it was translucent. And I thought, I was very scared because I thought I'm going to break it, I've ruined it, it's all over. And then I paused and I thought, wait, this could be great. So what I did is I carefully sanded this whole oval area to make a transparent panel in the middle of the sculpture to give it a little more life. I do have a website, www.bankersculpture.com.